The Dateable podcast is an insider's look into modern dating that the Huffington Post calls one of the top 10 podcasts about love and sex. On each episode, we'll talk to real daters about everything from sex parties to sex droughts, date fails to diaper fetishes, and first moves to first loves. I'm your host, Yue Xu, former dating coach turned dating sociologist. You'll also hear from my co-host and producer, Julie Krafchick, as we explore this crazy dateable world. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Dateable, a show all about modern dating, where we dig into the whys of people's behavior, including your own. We are still in our off-season / bonus episode phase, which also means we're ramping up for season 12, which is coming right up.
One more week.
Yeah, we're almost there. But it doesn't mean that this episode is not meaty. This is also a very meaty episode. We're bringing back Nikki Novo. We were on her podcast, The Final Swipe, and we just had a lovely conversation with her. So we decided to reuse that episode for this bonus episode.
Yeah, we love to reshare some of the podcasts we've been on because it's a good opportunity to listen to other people, but also hear from yours truly, us. And I feel like this one was interesting to re-listen to also because we do talk about just a lot of trends in dating, and a lot of them are things that even were going on pre-pandemic. We talk about how we started as a San Francisco-based podcast and now have kind of gone everywhere because we're almost like dating in the future. But it was interesting. Obviously, I won't give away all of the trends because that's what the episode is for. But it was interesting to re-listen to it months later now that we're still in essentially quarantine. In California, we have now just reopened. Who would have ever known it would be so great to be in the purple tier where it's literally hair salons and outdoor restaurants that are open needs. Only. Yeah, exactly. But it's a luxury. But it's been interesting to re-listen. And I mean, I think a lot of it has stayed the same, but then there's also, I've been noticing from my own situations, but also from friends that I feel I think we thought at the beginning that there was more of this I want to say coveted first kiss that was happening because people didn't want to risk their safety because of COVID, and they wanted to if you kissed, it almost essentially meant that you were entering a relationship. And I feel what I've been hearing a lot is that isn't the case anymore, and I think it's byproduct of the fact that we've been in quarantine for now almost a year. And I'm not saying it's right in any way. I think it's actually kind of fucked up, to be honest, but I think it's really fascinating that people are just hitting their wits' end with without physical contact potentially for a year.
So people are gonna fuck it up, that's just gonna happen. When you get so lonely and so needing affection, it kind of throws everything else out the window, and you're you know what? If I really want to kiss someone, I'm gonna kiss someone. It does put people in danger, and it does worry me a little bit. So I'm really hoping that people will think twice before they engage in physical activity with each other. But it also means that people can say whatever they want just to get a little something.
Totally. I think for me, I'm definitely going to make a rule for myself that I don't kiss anyone until we've had at least a couple of socially distanced dates, because I think there is this emotional false intimacy that happens with video and phone dates that you feel you're on a third date and you're not. And I think I personally I'm I would feel fucked over essentially if I kiss someone and they disappear. I know it's funny to say that because I used to just make out with everyone on dates, but it's kind of when you have sex and then you don't hear from them again because you're they're now putting you in physical danger, even worse potentially. So I don't know, I think there's just a feeling of kind of feeling you're someone's quarantine buster, feeling used a little, that I just don't want for myself personally.
And also you don't know who they're kissing,
right? If they're freely kissing you, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they're probably out there just the kissing bandit, as they call it.
Another thing that's been interesting I've heard is more and more people inviting people over for the first date to their home. And I had a friend recently that she's should I do it? Should I not do it? It's
No.
downpouring. And I was I wouldn't do it, but I can't tell you what to do. I wouldn't do it. And I think actually someone posted this in our group too. And it's kind of you have to look at would you do this behavior before quarantine and COVID? I would never go to a random stranger from the internet's home. But she ended up doing it. She did message me his name, photo, address.
What is this, contact tracing?
Basically, she's like, if I don't text you by like 9 a.m. tomorrow, like send out the search party for me.
Oh my God. I'm like less worried about that and more worried about the germs that this other person's bringing into your home. Like I think that your chances of getting COVID are a lot higher than the chances of being a serial killer. Right? I just think there's more health implications. It's kind of insane because I don't even invite friends over.
No.
But I also do have friends who have the same rules. Like they don't have friends over, but they will have a random stranger over for a one-night stand. It's contradictory a little bit.
It is. Huh? But then at the same time, it's like, I get it. Like, we can't put our dating lives on hold completely because it's already been a year. Like I know there's a vaccine in sight, but like it might not be for another 6 months. And I think if we all knew like the vaccine was surely coming by March, maybe that would change the behavior. But I think people have lost trust a little in these like timelines a bit. So I see it from the other perspective, but I'm also like, we've come this far, like don't want to sacrifice health either for like a kiss that means nothing, you know?
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, is it going to be worth it in the end?
Right. You have to like think about that the next day of like, was this worth it? You know, like, and it's tough with dating because it's like, if this person ends up being the love of your life, then yeah, it probably was worth it. If they end up disappearing the next week, then it wasn't. But sometimes you just don't know that until like you're far enough in. And like, I guess like in theory, even if you made like, let's say you had like 3 or 4 socially distanced dates and like you were getting to that point, like in theory, someone could find out something and make them not want to pursue it. That could always happen. But I think I would at least feel better that like we gave it a shot opposed to like a one-time meet and then never see each other again. That's just my personal justification.
Yeah. And I think people can always say they're safe and you can ask them these questions. But when you look at their behavior, it doesn't always line up. You know, they're like, oh, I don't see anybody. I don't hang out with anybody. But I did go out drinking with a few friends last night. And you're like, so you do see people. Like what?
I know.
It's like a really weird thing because I do have some friends who are very, very safe. I mean, I guess like with me, they're very, very safe, but they're getting to a point where, you know, they're like, oh, I went to this virtual thing and then met someone and we decided to take it offline. So we just decided to meet up at my house because it's so cold outside. I'm like, wait, but you don't even have me over.
Right.
But you had some random stranger over there. Like, oh, yeah, but it was like, you know, we had a connection. Oh,
yeah, I know. It's a weird, I agree. I think everyone kind of has like their convenient theories for them that make them feel justified. And I'm not talking down because I'm sure I've been like to dates like, yeah, I don't really see anyone. And then I like see you or see someone else. And it's just not accurate. And I admit that. Like last night, I'll throw UA under the bus a little. We tried to celebrate UA's. We tried to celebrate UA's birthday. And I ended up meeting up with just Louise, not UA.
I know.
It was too cold for UA.
It's too cold. One, I really don't love birthday celebrations. I like never do anything for my birthday. And the only times I do it is because people ask to do it. And 2, it's like, I don't know, in San Francisco, it was like 50 degrees, but to me it's like 30 degrees because I'm a fucking wimp. And the thought of dining outside with like huddling around one heat lamp, I couldn't even fathom enjoying myself. I told Julie, I'm like, I went out for a walk with my dog and I almost cried because I was so cold. I'm just so not used to it, cold weather anymore.
Anyways, tangent, but we totally were fine and it was not actually that cold out. But I also recognize I'm from the East Coast and I have a very thick skin when it comes to cold. I used to live in an apartment building. I'd be the only one swimming like in January. So I get it. I'm like definitely a little weird with that stuff. But I was thinking about it though. I'm like, oh, I just like told these dates that I'm not seeing anyone, but I'm like sitting here with Louise, like, you know, eating and stuff. And like, obviously it's like a false sense of like, I obviously trust Louise, but I'm like, when you really think about that, like, it's not that I'm not seeing anyone. I am seeing someone. It's not like Louise is the only one I'm seeing. Like, I saw other friends like the other week, and it's like, that's the part though. It's like so hard though. It's like, what's the line of balancing your mental health and like having some social contact versus like being totally safe. Like it's just such a hard line to balance.
Yeah, I just feel like right now we're operating like scooters, like on the road, you know, when it's convenient to act like a pedestrian or like, oh, it's a red light, but I'm on a scooter. But then you get, you know, but then you're like, no, but I can also be on the road because I'm also part automobile. I don't know. That's where I think people are. It's like you said, it's a convenient way of explaining their lives. And I totally understand. I don't think we're trying to like reprimand anybody. You gotta do what's best for you, but also think about the consequences. Like for me, I'm constantly thinking about my parents. I do see them on a regular basis. So I don't want to put them at risk until they get their vaccine. Then I'm going to party it up. I'm just kidding.
Totally. No, but I think it's like I've made a rule for myself, like no indoor spaces with friends. Like I've been really trying to abide by that. But I do recognize like if I do meet someone I hit it off with, like that probably will be the next step. So it's like I describe myself as being safe because I am always wearing masks. I am always like doing that. But then it's like, what is your definition of safe versus it's all subjective. Like if I looked at like my mom's definition of safe, she'd probably think I was like engaging in super risky behaviors because I'm like going out to eat and doing stuff, you know? So it's like outdoors. But that's also my loophole. I'm like, oh, because I'm outdoors, it's fine, you know?
Right. Yeah. But then, you know, you do want to take it to the next level. You can't stay outdoors forever. And it's not comfortable to make out outdoors all the time.
Nope. Can we also talk about other craziness this week? Like, did you get your GameStop shares?
I was like, could we use Reddit for Dateable? Like, could we like get 1 million subscribers like today just by going on Reddit? The power of Reddit, you know, just makes me feel old. I'm like, how does this work? But I also was thinking, I just put down a down payment for a condo, and I was like, if I put that money in GameStop, game over. I'd be rich, bitch.
So funny. I don't know about you, but I mean, I've lived in San Francisco for 11 years now, but I feel like I've had like multiple lives within San Francisco. Like even like before I met you, like I had different friends that I would like hang out with. And it's funny how you like suppress memories and then something like little triggers them. But like I used to have this like male best friend that like was totally platonic, but we would hang out all the time. And he had this old roommate that would like come around and hang out sometimes. And he worked at GameStop and like he would like go up to girls and like lead with the fact that he worked at GameStop. And we were always
that was a cool thing.
Yeah, like we're always just like, what the fuck? Like why? Like, you know, like this is even pre like obviously maybe now if he led with he worked at GameStop, he'd actually get a reaction. But
it's sort of ironic because a few months ago I bought gift cards from GameStop because they also sell like Uber Eats and DoorDash. I really felt like they were a failing business. And I was joking with my boyfriend. I was like, you know, if GameStop doesn't go out of business, we should try to buy it because maybe there's something there. You know, like I feel like they're still in business for a reason. And now I'm like, I should have acted on that.
Damn it. I was thinking though, it's just funny because like I like haven't thought about this whole like, you know, this GameStop guy and all this stuff. But I feel like I'm like, I don't even remember his name. I just remember him like leading with the fact of GameStop. But I was like thinking about it and I'm like, damn, like I feel like single girls are always told they need to get like a gay best friend. But I feel like actually having a straight best friend that you're not attracted to in any way was my best source of meeting men back in the day.
Yeah, well, you know how I feel about this. It only works until one person wants to fuck. Like, I get it.
Both of us didn't. Like, it was like a very mutual, like, thing. Like, I mean, I ended up, like, fucking his friends, but not him. Like, it worked out.
Yeah, I mean, it only works out until it doesn't work out, right? Like, you guys do not hang out anymore.
Yeah, but it's not because of it's because of his friends. It's not because of, like,
exactly.
Something with
it's
him.
Still indirectly something related to sex. Like,
True. It does come around, but it did work out for a long time. But the best is when you meet someone that's like a loose connection to them. Because I had one of those situations.
Right,
like it was like we went to a birthday party and then there was this guy there that he didn't know personally. It was like, but I would not have gone to that birthday party without this contact. Those are the best ones.
So was this reciprocal? Like, was he able to fuck your friends?
He tried. Didn't work out.
Okay,
But
so
yeah.
he got 0 out of you.
No, he definitely, actually, that's not true. He did sleep with one of my friends. He did
Okay,
sleep with one of
great.
my friends.
Great.
But it wasn't through
he got
me.
1.
It actually wasn't through me. It was outside of it. But anyways, I feel like, I don't know if it's like a byproduct of people relying more on apps or getting older. Maybe it's both. But I feel like back in the day, like I just met so many more people like through mutual friend groups.
Through friends, right. Because you hang out, you go to their house, and then you're like, oh, all it takes is FaceTime. I keep saying this, right? It's like if you just keep seeing the same person over and over again, you become more attracted, and then that like romance can build.
Oh, totally.
But it's harder over fucking like apps. You're just looking at a few pictures of them, and you have to make a decision right there. It's hard.
Yep.
I think that's really hard to do. But I did learn a few tips. So I've been reading up about body language because I know a lot of people are like, how do I show interest over Zoom dates? How do I gauge their interest? So I learned a few things about how you can instantly get people to like you.
Ooh, I like this.
Apparently, if you raise your eyebrows quickly,
we're both doing it on YouTube.
Yeah, it shows interest and it shows approachability. So you can do this over video, or if you're just like walking outside and you see someone you like, all you have to do is just raise your eyebrows just a little bit.
But I feel like when I just did it, I looked like a creeper, not like
Well, I mean, don't hold it.
I was trying too hard. It
should be like 1 millisecond.
You're
shouldn't be like,
hey.
holding. Don't look like you're constantly like in the surprise mode, okay? It's an up down. It's an up down. Okay. That's it. It's very quick. And also, if you tilt your head as you speak, it shows it's supposed to make you more attractive. It's a more attractive angle, and it shows vulnerability. So the other person's more willing to open up to you. When you speak over video straight on, it shows dominance and aggression. So if you just want to like tilt your head a little bit, we love puppies when they do that. When people do that, it shows a little bit of vulnerability and it puts you in a more attractive angle.
Well, thank you for sharing. I feel like I am absolutely the worst at picking up subtle cues or showing them myself. Like it's one of those things I've just never been able to grasp in my entire life. Like I remember like my ex was like, you were giving me all these signs. And I'm like, what? Like I was not doing that intentionally. Like if I was, it wasn't intentionally. I don't have that much game. So like I think it's interesting. Like the eyebrows, I don't think I would have ever noticed. The like tilt head, I don't think I would have noticed that.
A little tilt head.
I'm gonna start going like this on dating.
Well, not too tilted. I mean, like not ear to shoulder here. You don't want to look like you're stuck in that position. Julie's like stuck in this tilt head with her eyebrows permanently raised. She just looks great. Like, what is wrong with her?
They're like, can we have this video date now? Thanks.
or they feel sorry for you. Like, are you?
Yeah, they're like, are you frozen? Are you frozen? Yeah, are you frozen? I'm like, no, I just heard this is how I attract God.
There we go. Another tip is hide your self view. In Zoom, you can easily do that. Click on the hover over your video, click on the 3 dots, hide self view. So you're not looking at yourself and you're focusing on the other person. And in turn, you mirror them and you see if they mirror your body movements. So we had a question about this on YouTube page where someone was like, oh, I learned about mirroring. If she doesn't text me back for 3 hours, I'm going to mirror the same and not text her back for 3 hours. And we're like, no, that's not what mirroring means. It means to mirror each other's body movements and language. So if someone's like got their hand on their face and then you do the same, it shows that you're actively listening. So, just a few things, because I've been researching ways to make my Zoom calls more entertaining. So this is a great way to do it. When you turn off your self view, you actually have a much more engaging conversation because you notice a lot more about the other person instead of looking at your background.
I love that. Let's practice on our work calls. Practice the head tilt. The eyebrow raise. Is that what we're going to call it?
Yeah, eyebrow. rays.
Yeah, it sounds so seductive.
Seductive. But if you've had too much Botox, you probably can't do it. So it just, just do the head tilt. Do whatever in your range of motion.
I was telling you, I've noticed an interesting phenomenon of people looking better on video than in real life.
No, that's crazy.
It's funny because I was like re-listening to this episode with Nikki Novo, and I was talking about like how I was hesitant to do video because I actually feel like I don't look as good on video, and I was afraid like that would be my first impression. But it's actually kind of fun and ironic that I've noticed it be the reverse. Like I just didn't think that was possible at that time. But you brought up a good point. Like some celebrities look a lot better on camera than they do in real life. So it's totally possible.
Some people just have a face for camera because the camera picks up like the different features and makes them look more symmetrical. But then in person, their features are too pronounced. Like Anne Hathaway is a really good example. I've heard in person, you're just like, whoa, her face is just like so striking that you're like, doesn't even look real. Doesn't look that attractive. But on camera, she's just, she has like a very symmetrical looking face. So yes, I can see how video can do that. So could be misleading sometimes.
Yep, Mark Wahlberg's another example. I was gonna say I didn't meet him, but I remember I had a friend that like worked at like some entertainment company, and he was like invited us to an after party of one of Mark Wahlberg's movies. He was like getting us up the back entrance, like to like sneak us in, and then Mark Wahlberg was literally leaving to like exit this party because he probably didn't want to be there anymore.
Oh my gosh!
So we just like passed over each other like in the staircase, and we're like, oh wait, there's Mark Wahlberg. And he did not look like he was like way shorter in person. Like just
they always are.
Not look the same as his on-screen presence at all. It was kind of disappointing.
Why is it that when I think of Mark Wahlberg, I think of Boston? Is he like from Boston?
Yeah.
Okay. He's like in the epitome of Boston.
There's a Wahlburgers burger chain that he started.
That's his burger chain?
Yeah.
Oh, shit. I didn't know that.
This was in Boston that I saw him. I keep saying met. I did not meet him. I passed him by.
He's so hot on camera,
but he's not in real life. Not in
like,
it was so disappointing.
Or then you're like, I don't need to obsess over this person because they're not like this in real life. But on camera, in TV and films, he's beautiful. He's super hot. He's sexy.
I know. So, anyways, Tangent. I guess maybe people don't need to be intimidated by video. We'll give it a nice spin and takeaway. You could use Yube's tips, and then also know that maybe this person that you think is beautiful on video might just be an average person when you meet in real life.
An average Joe. Can you believe that? Okay, well, let's get to this episode with Nikki Novo. She's such a great interviewer, and we had such a great conversation with her. We do want to promote another fabulous book before we bring you Nikki Novo. This one's called Hopeless Romantic by Marina Adair. Set against the breezy backdrop of coastal Rhode Island, best-selling author Marina Adair's latest novel asks whether two of a small town's biggest hearts can learn to put themselves first in the name of love. I feel like I need some like dramatic music for
In the Name of Love. I keep hearing that song.
And this is why they have two of the biggest hearts in this town. As a caregiver for her autistic brother, Beckett Hayes knows how meaningful a little extra help can be when life happens. So she opened up a store called Consider It Done's a personal concierge service in her small town. And then in the same town is Levi Rhodes. So after his father's death, he's running the family marina and bar while putting his dreams of sailing on hold until Beck shows up at his bar. Marina Adair is a #1 nationally best-selling author with over 1 million books sold. You can find out more at kensingtonbooks.com or wherever books are sold.
Wow, I feel like you should be like a personal PR rep for that book.
I feel like I should, yes.
I want to go get it now. You just sold it so damn well. I'm like, wow, this is intriguing. What's going on?
Two of the most selfless people, like their schemas must be, selflessness. And subjugation or whatever. Like I feel like they need to find their true love with each other.
Always comes back to schemas, doesn't it?
Always. What did we say? Same schemas, different schemas, same shit. Yeah.
Yep. That sweatshirt is now available at the merch store for everyone. No, I'm not even kidding. It is.
A message from our sponsor ourselves, the merch store.
Dateablepodcast.com/shop.
It's true. It's
Actually,
true.
just while we're doing a quick tangent on the merch store, we are currently running a contest in our Facebook group for crowdsource. This was a great idea that Jasmine had, one of our members. She said, like, can we do this contest where we like crowdsource ideas for merch? And the winner, we decided, well, essentially everyone gets to upvote, and the winner will get a free piece of merch with their design slogan. So they've been rolling in. So if you're in the Facebook group, if you're not in the Facebook group yet, join Love in the Time of Corona. You can put your crowdsourced idea in, and maybe you'll get merch out of it. Or at a minimum, whoever contributes ideas gets a discount code. So you can always buy the merch.
I really admire how Julie can insert our own messaging in between our sponsor messaging. That is really brilliant. She's like, by the way, this is just like a second thought, whatever, afterthought. I just want to tell you this. We have a merch store, and then we have like a Facebook group, and then we have a sounding board, and then we just go to dateablepodcast.com/. I'm like, wait. We have one more sponsor.
Well,
brilliant. Love it.
Yes. Before we go into, I'm going to just drop one more because I feel we are going to talk about another podcast that we love too. But one of the other things that we do want to keep pushing is the Most Dateable contest. It is happening in 3 weeks. The 18th.
Right after Valentine's Day, we have 6 contestants already locked and loaded. They're ready to compete.
Hundreds of submissions. We had to enlist a panel of judges to go through all the submissions. It was amazing.
We're about to announce our judges as well as the contestants. So you have to be in the Facebook group to see those announcements. We'll announce them one by one, to keep a little bit of mystery there. Mm-hmm. But we have a really great lineup of contestants and judges.
The judges we pulled from past Dateable guests. The judges panel is on fire. I love the people we ended up picking.
It's going to be so good. Again, February 18th. You can get your tickets now. Go to dateablepodcast.com/events.
And of course, sounding board members, the event tiers get that for free. So if you've been on the verge of signing up, you're like, the sounding board thing sounds really freaking cool, but I'm not sure. Now's the time. So you get to go to the Most Dateable contest, or if you set it up for the friends level, the bottom one, there'll be a discount code for you too. So basically, we're going to take care of sounding board members, but if you're not a sounding board member, you just kind of want to like dive your like toe in or go like
dive that toe in.
If you want to just that's not the right
Take
word.
That toe for a dive.
If you want to stick that toe in, it's just we're going delirious. If you want to stick that toe in, see what's going on, but with the Dateable after shows is a good way to buy a one-off ticket. So
I'm so sorry to this podcast that we're about to promote, because I do have one more quick announcement. And it's not really an announcement because this just reminded me. So Julie and I had a really great interview this week with AP Television. That's Associated Press. And in the middle of it, this is the best. So we're talking about video dates, exactly what we're just talking about, how some people don't translate on video when you see them in person. And Julie's like, look at our sounding group when we do these happy hours. You really don't see people from the waist up. Because she meant to say from the waist down. And then the interviewer was like, that sounds like a fun group.
Yeah.
Sign me up.
Such a Freudian slip. And it was so funny. And then we were like, okay, let's try that again. I'm like, I need to move on. I just can't even say this statement. I was like, without bursting out laughing, I just can't even say it.
But maybe we'll try a happy hour one of these days. It's just bottoms only.
Guess the body, because you don't know anyone's head.
Oh my gosh. I just really hope people wear pants. That's Catherine. Yeah. That's for you. Okay, now we can move on to this podcast. We love promoting other great podcasts too. So there's another one that we love to promote this week. It's called First Cup of Coffee Podcast. So award-winning and best-selling author of fantasy and romance, Jeffe Kennedy shares her first cup of coffee of the day with listeners, giving a daily insight into the realities of being a career author. And a lot of you have told us that you want to exercise your creative side and you've been thinking about writing. So this is a great podcast for you. It's a daily podcast podcast. She chats about books, writing, and reading over her first cup of coffee of the day. And she shares her daily challenges and a look into what it's like to be a professional writer. So First Cup of Coffee is part of the Frolic Podcast Network, which is what we're a part of too. You can find more outstanding podcasts just like this one by subscribing to frolic.media/podcasts.
Awesome. One other quick shout out before we get in.
More.
This is it. The end. The end. I just thought of it and it made my heart melt so much. So I wanted to give a shout out. It's Jason, one of our best members. Jason loves this, so we can say it. But he was in Colorado on a vacation and he took a photo. He put in the snow, he wrote out "Stay Dateable" and took a photo of himself master dating, which is our favorite term. Everyone's like, wait, he took a photo of himself masturbating
in the snow. He wrote it with his dick. He wins most dateable.
This was a very wholesome photo.
That's a strong dick.
What's your talent competition?
I can write dateable in the snow with my dick.
Oh my god, we just took the most wholesome, nice thing that someone did.
Jason, I apologize to you. My mind went there. I mean, I hope you appreciate it too. But
wow, I'm dying. But for anyone that did not see it, he posted in the Facebook group and we reposted on Instagram, but he wrote out "Stay Dateable" in snow. It was super PG. It was not what we just made it into.
Not confirmed. But I was like, not confirmed. How did he get that in the snow? Nobody else questioned this.
I mean, I assumed he took like a stick or something.
Whatever, you know?
Not that type of stick, okay?
No.
Oh my god. Crying. This is too funny. I am crying. This is too funny. But anyways, we love when people are thinking about us. We love when they etch things in, a tree, a snow, whatever, snowbank, whatever.
Dive their toes in.
I can't talk today. Sand. Let's go to the beach and write "Stay Dateable." I love it. Keep those photos coming.
Thank you, Jason. We really appreciate you. I hope you didn't take offense to that. But if you actually did use your friend down under, let us know. Let us know. Oh my god, we are seriously delirious. Let's get to this episode. Nikki Novo, she's fantastic and not nearly as immature as we are.
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Final Swipe. So excited to be here with you today. Extra excited because we have two really amazing, cool women who are with us to give some laughs, some guidance, a little bit of everything coming from the Dateable podcast, introducing to you UA and Julie of the Dateable podcast, which if you don't already subscribe to their podcast, you should be downloading it. But we'll talk about that more later. But welcome, ladies. Thanks for being here with me.
Thanks for having us.
It's a fun party. So I have lots that I want to talk to you about and lots to cover. But I was hoping if first you can start off with how you started the podcast and what made you want to start it.
We love telling this story. It's like a meet cute story of like a rom-com. So Julie and I met probably 5 years ago, because we started the podcast shortly after we met. And it was so Julie had this really great business where she was connecting people over brunch in real life who had similar interests. So it was a great way to meet random people that you wouldn't normally meet in real life. And we met at one of her brunches, ironically enough, and we became fast friends. And we noticed everything we talked about was about dating. Everything was about modern dating. I had just moved to San Francisco. Julie had been in San Francisco for most of her adult life. We did a lot of compare contrast, but also just like the craziness of navigating what the hell is going on. I mean, we just kept asking, what is going on? And we both had really good stories, and the people around us had really good stories. So we thought, why don't we try a podcast? Why not? Let's see what happens. And when we first started, it was all about just telling dating stories. And we knew that there would be endless stories to tell. But I think now that we're in our 10th, we just wrapped our 10th season.
Wow.
We quickly realized that it's not just the dating stories. It's really taking away from the stories what we can learn from it and getting to the bottom of why people do the things they do.
Yeah, and like one of the reasons why I actually started the company to meet in real life was from my own frustrations on apps. Like it felt like I would be on apps and I would have a ton of dates, but not many of them would actually lead anywhere. And I was, went through my own kind of like self-discovery and challenges with dating, and Yue had a background as a dating coach, so she had her own unique experiences. And I think that's why we kind of felt like we needed to do this platform to really hear other people's stories. And what we soon realized is that everyone had very unique experiences, but they also had a lot of the same underlying themes. And we actually kind of started this as like a dating in San Francisco podcast because we thought it was so unique and so different. And then we quickly realized like the same issues here were everywhere. They just showed up in a little bit of a different way, but the underlying changes, like with technology, with gender roles, like all of the shifts that were happening were universal.
So it sounds like you guys are like running an experiment and you're watching all these crazy humans do this crazy thing.
Kind of, actually.
Except we're also part of the experiment.
Yeah,
totally.
I think some of the most interesting things we've done is we've actually done some like he said, she said perspective dates where two people go out, and Yue and I have also done this where we've had our own past dates on the podcast to share their perceptions of us. And it has been mind-blowing just to see how different people perceive different things. And I think it's really shown us that, so much of this is just having compassion for other people, and everyone's just trying to do their best here.
Yes, I love that. I always think about that, and I always like remind my clients and my students that, at the end of the day, like everything that you're feeling, the other person's feeling as well. Like we're all like these humans, but we put each other on pedestals and we have all these ideas. But I think that that's the beautiful perspective that you guys offer. So I love that. That I have not heard the podcast where people are your past dates are talking about you, and that sounds really interesting. And scary all at the same time. I know, Julie, you're dating, but Yue, are you also dating?
No, I've been in a relationship for almost 2 years now.
Oh, wow. I was wondering about that. Like, did you feel that it might be scary to like change your identity because like maybe your identity was like wrapped up in being like a person that goes on dates and like having, because of like, what you do? Or was there any kind of, was it hard to make that transition, or you felt like, okay, to be like, okay, I'm ready for this?
That's a really interesting question. So when I lived in New York, I had my own dating coach business, and it was called Miss Single-Fied. I was like known as Ask Miss Single-Fied any dating questions you have. And a friend posed this question to me, and he was like, what happens when you're not single? What are you then? So I ended up getting, I bought the domain Maryfied because I was like, well, eventually Single-Fied will become Maryfied. And when we started the podcast, I had the exact same thought as, well, we are always going to evolve, but our podcast is more than just single people dating. In fact, so many of our friends who are in relationships who are married listen to the podcast too. So I think it's actually really nice that Julie and I can offer perspectives from someone who's single and someone who's in a relationship, but it's all based around human connection.
Yeah.
I think the other thing too, it's like we've been doing this now for 4 years. So both of us have actually shifted our relationship statuses quite a bit in those 4 years. As you would imagine, like we haven't just stayed static. So when we started the podcast, I was in a relationship, Yue was single. And then we've shifted along the way. There was a period that we were both single. There was a period where we were both dating, or in relationships. Like, it's just like, it's kind of zigged and zagged throughout. And I think what we've learned too is a lot of this is beyond dating. It's how you navigate long-term relationships, like what the work that you need to do on yourself. Like I think when we first started this, we thought it would always be about just two people interacting. And what we've learned is so much of this is self-work that doesn't change. Like it doesn't go away. It doesn't go away because you get in a relationship. It doesn't go away because you get married. Like this is something that's just a continued evolution through the rest of your life.
Yeah. I mean, I always like remind my students also, like when, especially in that dating process, like we put so much emphasis on the other person because we like, oh, bring this new human into our experience, into our life. But it's really like more than ever a time to watch and care for ourselves, because that, like, depending on how we feel about ourselves, how we are viewing ourselves, all that kind of stuff is like how we're going to relate to that other person. So it's like, it's an ongoing project for sure.
Absolutely.
So Yue, I found it funny because, so Julie, you've been in San Francisco for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then Yue came from New York, right?
I lived in Beijing for 2 years before moving to San Francisco. So it was like New York, Beijing, and then San Francisco.
Okay. So I would love, so I'm based in Miami, but I have a lot of clients all around the country, also all around the world as well. But I remember, I think it was probably maybe last year or 2 years ago, I was getting a huge group from San Francisco. And I happened to visit there because my sister-in-law is from the Bay Area. And when I went there, I was like, I got to see what's going on here, because, you know, I've only dated in Miami and I've dated in LA, the two places I've lived. And I was just San Francisco always seemed like such a fascinating dating market to me. I think that it was one thing that I really noticed, at least within my clients. Remember, I'm not dating there, but I was kind of like working through the clients, was how, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is just like my perception, but almost, I guess, because the gender roles there are so new. I don't know if I want to say neutral, but they almost like, that's the way you guys date is very like 50-50. Like those gender roles are so different than, like, even let's say in Miami, because there's such a strong Latin culture, we still date like a little bit more traditional. There's never a question of who's going to pay for the meal. It's part of our culture. Where in San Francisco, I just found it so interesting that, like, I don't know if it's because of the technology, the tech that's happening there, but the gender roles plays a really funny role in how San Francisco people date. And I was just wondering, like, especially maybe UA, because you were coming from these other places, like, did you notice that? Did you find it like a different market?
Absolutely. And that was the basis of why Julie and I could not stop talking about dating, because I was just shocked by the dating culture. Coming from Beijing, where I lived for 2 years, same thing, very traditional gender roles. You know exactly what's happening on a date, who's calling, who's instigating, who's initiating. But in San Francisco, I remember telling Julie some of the stories where on my first date, this guy brought his business proposal because he wanted to get my advice on something we were trying to start. And I've also held doors open for men who didn't say thank you. And I became very resentful towards that. But I think there were two things that I really realized, and I can't wait for Julie to tell her story, because she had only known San Francisco dating in her adult life, right? So this is like good. Okay. There was no point of comparison in that. But for me, there were two things I realized. One was most people are attracted to San Francisco for the city and for the career opportunities. So nobody's coming to San Francisco thinking, I'm going to get a better love life. I'm coming here for the bustling single scene. And I think when you attract so many people who are high achievers, who are trying to really, amplify their careers, the gender roles get thrown out the door, because it's all about, hey, let's see what let's network so I can see what my next step is in my career. And the second thing I really realized is that when we first started the podcast, we thought all of these issues were very unique to San Francisco. What we found out was basically people in San Francisco were dating in the future, because what we really predicted was what was happening 5 years ago. And if you look at if you look at what we experienced when we first started the podcast, we're starting to see the same things trickle down to some of the other cities like LA, New York. Same things are happening. So I wouldn't say we have a much different dating scene. It's just that we're maybe dating a little bit farther ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say something very similar because I've been here for a little over 10 years. I'm hitting my 11th year. So I'm originally from the East Coast, so I have that background. But like Yue mentioned, I've pretty much spent my entire adult dating life since 25 here. And I think San Francisco has changed since I first moved here. It's definitely a bit more like tech bro-y and like has like those connotations where I think when I first moved here, I definitely moved here for work, don't get me wrong, and others did too. But there was also this like progressive view of San Francisco, and a lot of people moved here because they didn't want the stereotypical life necessarily. Right. And I think that still holds true today. I think that's why polyamory, for example, is something that's so out in the open here. While it exists other places, it's much more closeted. And here it's celebrated as people that are saying, hey, I want to optimize my love life and I want to, I don't want to be cheated on. I don't want to cheat. I want to like do something that is going to make me happy for the long term. I don't want to be in one of those like boring sexless marriages, not to say that all marriages are, but I think that's what people's mentality is. Like I can design, if I can design a tech product or an app, I can design the love life I want.
That's
and
fascinating.
Yeah, and I think that mentality is what has kind of put San Francisco in the future, as Yue said. I think that's a good way to say it. It's not that we have it all figured out, but a lot of the things that are really coming to the surface in other places have already been here for a few years, like apps, for example. I think that was one of those things, like when apps were kind of blowing up in different parts of the different other cities or in the country or even all over the world. San Francisco had been doing that for like 3-4 years at that point because all apps are created here. So it's just an interesting dynamic. And I really do think the shift is happening for gender roles all over. I agree it's happening in San Francisco first because one, people don't like need to prescribe to just old values and traditions because of that progressive nature. But also, like Yue said, a lot of people are very alpha and career driven no matter what your gender. And I think that's going to just continue to go everywhere.
So fascinating. It's just so interesting. So for those of us who don't know what are these new, like the new types of relationships that you guys have been seeing that you're saying that are a little bit more common, right? Than over here. I hear them too. Like, again, Miami is a little, we're so traditional that it's not really like in here in Miami, but I hear it through my clients and I experience my clients in those relationships as well. But if you can share that for those of us who are, I don't know, in Oklahoma.
Yeah. I mean, I think like starting at like the most kind of PC common is probably just people that are like, I don't need to necessarily get married and have children, or I don't need to necessarily settle down right away. I want to develop myself. Maybe I want to hook up with a bunch of people. Like there's that level. And then if you go up, there's people that are into polyamory, which means like loving many and having relationships with many. And open relationships is in a similar camp, but different, that they have less relationships with others, but they will have sexual relations or hook up with others. And I think it's really that the folks here just don't believe in monogamy. Like they don't believe that that's what is meant for humans. It's the whole concept is ethical non-monogamy. So the idea is that I'm not going to cheat, which I think is half the problem with cheating is, or maybe even more than half the problem is the deception. It's not necessarily the physical act of sex. So if I can create this relationship where my partner knows that I'm openly having sex with other people or even openly having relationships with other people, then I can kind of counter that. So there's a lot of that's happening. And then within that, there's different variations. There's triads where there's 3 people in a relationship, or triples. Then you also have like unicorns where it's like one person dating a couple. So there's some other variations that get even more extreme.
And I think even beyond all of that, because there's so many different configurations. I think everyone has their own idea of what polyamory is, what an open relationship is. But what is interesting in a cultural shift is the language that people use to describe the people they're in relationships with. We're getting away from possession and more towards, this is someone I am connecting with. So for example, you'll hear people talk about their partner all the time. It used to be the term used for if you were in a homosexual relationship, this is my partner. Now hetero people use it. All kinds of relationships will use partner. And then even for like polyamorous relationships, it used to be hierarchical. So you have your primary and then you have the secondary, tertiary. But now we're seeing the shift towards non-hierarchical polyamory. It's just that you're connecting with multiple people and everyone's equal, and you treat everyone as an equal partner. So we're really seeing that cultural shift away from possession.
And I think like one of the benefit of all this, I think there's two things. It can be very confusing. I think there's something about the traditional way is that you just have one path. You know what you need to do. You know the steps that are taken. You know the progressions of a relationship. And then with this, it's all unknown territory. And I think that's actually one of the reasons what's made modern dating so difficult. Like if you get on an app, let's say you are someone that wants a more traditional relationship, you don't know if the other people want that. Like it's hard to know what everyone is looking for. But I think the beauty of it is that, I mean, we're kind of a generation that has a fallout of divorce, like following that one path and not being happy in life. So I think what the benefit here is, again, it's not saying that marriage is not the right path, like it can be. And I think that's one of the benefits too, is it's not just getting married and prescribing to gender roles or like a way that we had to do it. It's creating the marriage that you want, or you're deciding to take another path and create that love life that you want.
I mean, it's beautiful. And it's fascinating because it's exactly connected to the tech development, like you said, like just we can design this, we can design that. Like, why not design this? So it's just so fascinating to watch. I do, and I'm with you. Like, it is confusing for like I have clients who are in some of those kinds of relationships, and it's confusing for them because they're having to rework some of their programming. Like it's basically like you have to like upgrade that programming in order to understand how you really feel about being in this relationship. Because you may look at a girl who's in a relationship with a guy who's in an open relationship, and you may be like, oh, she has no self-worth. She thinks that's all she can get, et cetera, et cetera. Which I definitely, when I first saw that, I was like, wait a second, like what's happening? But when I kind of started to understand is that you actually, like the person has to break down their belief systems in order to really understand how they feel about being in these relationships. And a lot of them feel good being in those relationships. So, but it's the programming that kind of like sets us off there. So, and it's hard because you have to do a lot of convincing. You have to like convince other people that you're okay. I find a lot of my clients like feeling like they need to explain themselves when it's like it's very brave, it's very courageous. So interesting it's fascinating that you guys are seeing it early. What,
Nikki, that's
trends? Yes.
Nikki,
Yeah,
just
sorry.
One quick point. That's what you said triggered something that I thought about, was we had a woman on our show talk about navigating an open relationship. She's never done open relationships before. And the guy she fell in love with only wanted open relationships. And she came on our show, and what we realized is that in addition to the programming and reprogramming of yourself and your beliefs, there's also a lot of trial and error because these relationships don't come with a user manual. You don't know, like, how do I enter an open relationship? Step one,
right?
You just do it. So that's also part of a lot of the conflict too. It's a trial and error because for a lot of these open relationships too, there is another level where you do overstep or you do cross the line, but you have to figure out where that line is.
Right. Definitely. And I mean, it may not even happen like, just because you're interested, I think, in those types of relationships, it may not be the one that you end up in, it may not be the one that like you stay in forever. Because also, like, it's going to take time for those relationships to have a manual, like you explained, and like the reason, the way we do relationships right now is easy because like we've seen people doing it for generations, and I don't know the history of these kind of relationships, but for some odd reason, don't ask why, but I was looking into Greek mythology yesterday, and I was thinking, I forgot what, it was funny, on Wikipedia, they had a breakdown of like the different gods and who they had children with. And some of these gods were having children with like 52 women, basically.
Wow.
And I was like, this has probably existed for a while, probably because at some point these kind of relationships, obviously we're getting out of hand or whatever. But it's interesting. It's fascinating. I'm not like an expert, but it's interesting that you guys are seeing it earlier than most of us. So
you know what else though? It's like, even not these so quote unquote like untraditional relationships. I think even traditional relationships are going to start to not have a user manual. Like, even if you're with one partner, you get married, you have children, you go down that traditional whatever path, I think what's going to really shift is that people are still going to really shift how they have that relationship, and they find something that works for them and their partner. Like, one of the things that we've noticed is just how important communication is. And this isn't a revelation, like everyone knows this, but I think people's willingness to communicate in relationships now versus, let's say, 10 years ago is instrumentally different. I think we are in an age of therapy being accepted, where men are now starting to be okay with their feelings too. And I think like we've talked to, like, we did an episode with Ashley Madison, the affairs site. And one of the things that was fascinating there is we talked to a lot of the people that were having affairs, and a lot of them just did not talk to their spouses, like people that they had been married to for years. Like, there was just no open communication, no safe space. And I think like our generation, that is something that is a priority. And I know for myself, like, if I can't have an open conversation with someone, they can't hear me, they can't hear my feelings, where I'm coming from, how like I want to work with them to create a relationship, then it's not going to be a relationship with them for me.
Absolutely. Wow, I have to listen to that episode. Sounds fascinating. So if you guys remember what number that is, we'll definitely share that. And I think, this is probably like just kind of off topic, but that on the communication piece, I think a lot of reason why I see some women maybe taking longer than they expected to form that relationship at whatever year, whatever age they thought they were supposed to form it in. A lot of it has to do with we're still training, like men are still catching up in communication. It's not their fault. It's like, it's the patriarchy has been happening for a long time. And I feel like the work that has been being done, our generation, like if you're, an early millennial, let's say, or that you have been training that man. So to communicate, I see a lot of that happening, a lot of communication training going on. And it's easy to kind of be like, oh, it just hasn't happened for me. But it's like, we're also just doing some heavy work. I don't think the next generation is going to have to do that. It's funny. My husband is 10 years older than my youngest brother. So the difference between like how they relate is it's night and day, and my husband is not, it's just they're two different generations. And what my brother, has been trained into is very different than like what what was expected of my husband when he was dating and young, So, not that he's not young, poor guy, but anyway, I think that's like what you're saying about communication is so true, but we are I really do feel we're like in a place of still training. And some women as well, we're still training ourselves, but that's a big reason why I think it's being not delayed, but maybe taking a little bit more time than we expected for this generation.
That's an interesting perspective. I 100% agree with you. Like men that are in older generations versus younger think about things in very different ways. And I also think it applies to women too. Like Yue and I are like what we call elder millennials, or Eliza.
Us too. Yeah, me too.
Yeah. It's like
I'm on the cusp.
Yeah, we're like right on the cusp. So we kind of have these traditional values, but we also have progressive values. And then we talk to people that are in their 20s or like early to mid 20s, and they don't even know what the rules are. They have no qualms about approaching men and reaching out first. So I think things are shifting a lot. And I think it's an interesting point you brought up of why it might be taking some people that are in this more cusp situation longer to find that person, is because we want the progressive values, but maybe our partners or even ourselves aren't fully there yet.
Right. Perfectly said and put. Yes. I would love to hear of any trends you like, ghosting has been a trend for a while, but any other trends that you see in the dating world that you feel like would be worth mentioning?
Okay. Well, we have a lot of COVID trends.
Oh, yes, that's true. Let's talk about COVID trends.
We recently covered this new phenomenon called dumping, which is dumping someone over Zoom. And this is something that we're seeing during quarantine. And at first we thought, what a terrible, just dumping and dumping, those are just terrible words in general, but had a really negative connotation to it. But then when we really examined the kind of the intent behind it, the truth of the matter is relationships have to carry on whether we're in quarantine or not, whether COVID exists or not. And if during a time of quarantine, a relationship needs to end, it needs to end. And the best way to do that probably is through virtual setting, whether it's through a phone call or a video call. So it's just another way to phrase how people are navigating relationships during this time. I think another major trend that we've seen is people are really starting to question whether they want a relationship or not. We did an episode this season on relationships. Do you really want one? And the point of this whole episode was, for so many years, you grew up thinking that you wanted relationships because that's what society tells you should do, even if you never really understood what a relationship was. But this is such a great concentrated time right now, especially for us to just reflect and think, do I know what a relationship is? And two, am I ready? And do I want to enter into a relationship? So I think coming out of quarantine and coming out of COVID, we're going to see a lot of daters who are going to be making decisions that are more intentional than before.
Right. I think this has definitely been a time of self-awareness for many. And I think COVID has really ruined fuckboys is another trend that we're seeing.
No, that's true.
It was so easy to like send that you up text or, hit someone up or hit on someone at a bar. But now you're just not going to be hooking up as readily and easily. And I mean, we hear of men that are serenading people over Zoom. Like people are really stepping it up. So I think it's really apparent
That's a fuckboy to do.
Exactly. They're screwed. They got to step it up or get out. I don't know. Change their ways. This is the reform that they're needing.
100%.
So that's definitely something that has come up, is I think their bullshit meter is a lot higher. Like, I think people have used this time to really get clear of what they're looking for. And if that's not on their path, like, they're not going to risk their lives and do things that once were so, whatever, it happens. And now there's a lot of consequences that could come with it.
Absolutely. It's funny. I had a lot of clients, of course, I get scared about, that they can't date during this time. It was, it's especially if that's like something you're working towards, and it was scary to think that like maybe they can't meet people during this time. And I was like, are you kidding me? It's like the best time. Everybody is like, listen, this is who I am. This is what's happening. Like, there's just so, like you said, like less of that kind of, that BS meter is high, but also like we can't hide so much anymore either. So I felt that it was a good time. And I actually had a few students in my membership like actually form relationships during this time and are still in those relationships. So
great.
Have you seen anything like that? Anybody like connecting or Julie, did you do any some sort of like on the phone dating during coronavirus?
So I have done a couple recently. I spent primarily coronavirus actually reevaluating a past relationship of mine with
Mhm.
my ex. And I think it was actually a good time for us to do this during COVID-19 too, because we had a lot of time to just air out everything that had gone on and see if we could resolve it. But ultimately, we decided that it just wasn't the right fit still. And I've been experimenting with video dating a bit recently. I think I've been a little intimidated by it. I'm not going to lie. I think I kind of got over the hump this week. And I agree. I think there's a lot of benefits of it because I mean, the one example that I had this week, it wasn't a fit, but I think I'd rather learn that on a video call than spend all the time and their time meeting up when it's blatantly not a fit, right?
100%.
So I think that's a win also. Like I'm all for obviously giving people a shot, but I think if you like there's sometimes you just know it's not going to be a match, right? And I
Right.
think like sometimes video just shows that a lot more than photos. I think though there is something that's like a little intimidating. I know for me, I always think like, or I've been told too that I look better in real life than even in photos. Like I'm not
Mm,
super photogenic. So it's more
mhm.
is my first impression or is the only impression I'm going to get from this person via video where I feel awkward. So I think that's a challenge to kind of make it work in your favor. But I think there's ways that you can start to just get more comfortable with that. And the reality is we might be doing this for a very long time, if not ever, of how this might change dating. So
Mhm.
maybe it's the time is to invest in a ring light and, learn how to angle yourself because it
100%.
might be something that's happening. But
That's
we
your
have
next episode, guys.
exactly invest. But I think one of like we've heard mixed. I'll say that. I'll be honest, as we've heard mixed from people. I think when the pandemic started, everyone was super excited about video dating because it was new and novel, and then it started to like sour because people didn't know when they would ever meet this person. I think at the beginning too, it was like, oh, this is only going to be for a month. And then it just kept going. But now with states reopening gradually, I mean, we'll see what happens, but I think more social
Hopefully staying
distance.
open.
Yeah, social distancing
Mhm.
dates, or people at least learning how to adapt with masks. Like people are meeting up again. So I think people's appetite is back open because there's a path at the end of the tunnel. And we have heard of people that have met, like we had one past guest that said she struggled for years finding like a connection because the physical always seemed to get in the way. And she met someone through quarantine and they ended up like quarantining together for a bit and having like a pretty serious relationship. I think ultimately it actually didn't end up working, but at the same time, this might have gone on for years and maybe they
And it
found out
moved her
sooner.
forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, it moved her forward. Well, I actually, I have the same situation with a few clients where I have some clients that move too quickly. Typically, like they, it's like meet, like sleep, like fantasize about being with this person, get really anxious about the speed and what's happening, what's not happening. And quarantine has like been the best thing for them because they had no choice but to go slow and get to know somebody. So I have
Mhm.
one student that I mean, could never get past like a third date or something. And she's in a full blown relationship right now because she was
Great.
forced to like get to know this person over like a slow 4 month period until they were like able to, and they're in different cities. So like,
Mm.
they didn't have the opportunity to quarantine together. But now that things are opening, they just started being able to see each other in person. And like I was from the beginning, I was like, this is going to be the best thing for her. Like I just knew I was like, this is going to be the best thing. Like hallelujah, quarantine, because she had no other choice, and there was no anxiety of like, is this person maybe seeing other people? Like that's probably not happening if that's like one of her concerns. Or where is this going? Or like, is this progressing? Like
Mm.
she couldn't ask those questions because this was like the speed that it was going in. So definitely the slowing down is good for those of us who use like our body to get close to somebody sometimes, like, and missing all the red flags from the get-go. And this, this I think has been in the favor of those of us that's like our situation. Definitely that was my situation when I was dating. So it's been great,
there's just there are no other distractions. You're not at a bar. You're not thinking about your next drink. You're not thinking about what you're doing for brunch with your friends this weekend. So it is that focused time with the person that you're talking to. I would also say that we've had a few listeners say, I can't wait to meet this person so that I can see if my feelings are real. We've been talking throughout the entire 3 months of lockdown, and I can't wait to see if these feelings are carried true when we meet in person. I would also say to anybody in this position, you're currently in a relationship. Even though you haven't met that person in real life, you're still in a relationship. Your feelings are invested. You are still putting yourself into someone's life and integrating them into your life. So whether this relationship carries out in the real world quote unquote real world when you meet in person or not, I wouldn't say don't feel disappointed or defeated that if it doesn't work out when you do meet, because you're still going through a relationship. This is all great practice for another relationship if this one doesn't work out.
That's a great point. I think the other thing that's really nice about it is we have to remember that modern dating was not perfect before COVID-19. I mean, how many times have people said like modern dating sucks and all this stuff? So I think people kind of have amnesia that they wanted to go back to the way it was. But I think this is like a good opportunity for us to create the dating life that we want. And I know for me personally, it got to a point when I was doing a lot of serial dating that I wouldn't even like add someone's number or name in my phone. Like I'd put their number in. I wouldn't take that next 1 second step to add their name because I thought in my mind, there's a pretty good shot I'll never see this person again. That's a terrible way to go into a date. I think like for me, like the best date I had that actually ended up turning into a relationship that I had from a dating app was someone that I was really excited to meet. Like we had really good banter ahead of time. I was genuinely excited to meet him. And I think that mindset shift really, I mean, one, we just got along well in person. It translated from digital to real life. But I think the mindset shift of having that excitement to meet up is so essential. And I'm hoping that that translates now, especially if you've done a few phone calls or video dates with someone. At least you're weeding out the people that are just like wildly wrong for you at that point.
Totally.
And you can get excited to actually meet the people that have made it through those steps in real life.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you're interviewing for a job, chances are like they're going to first video like interview you over the phone before they, so why would we do this any other way? Question, speaking of like mindset, I know that you guys have a really nice Facebook group, which I love the name, Love in a Time of Corona, with by the Dateable podcast. And I was wondering if you've been seeing kind of mental health or mindset like slipping during Corona. Like I've seen it a lot. So I was just wondering if you're seeing that in the group and what's been like your approach or take on that.
I think the fact that more and more people are joining our Facebook group just shows that people really need support right now. Most of our conversations right now are turning into how are you navigating through this? How are you dealing with this? And it's been really wonderful to see people support each other, but also just be really vulnerable during this time. I think we've always been such huge fans of just working on mental health. And we always say you have to work on your mental health first before getting into a healthy relationship. But now more than ever, I think because people are so alone with their thoughts, that any sort of mental health, anything comes up, it becomes really amplified during this time. And for anybody who's starting to feel that suddenly, you're not alone. I think a lot of people are feeling this. And the first place you should go to is to find that support system. And you'd be surprised. Your support system doesn't have to be your closest friends or your your relatives, your family, which are great support systems. But sometimes it's nice to have a group of strangers who can give you really objective advice and who can look at your situation without knowing you. It's really nice to have that too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I think people have been handling the pandemic in various ways. And also with Black Lives Matter, that was just a very trying time. And it still continues to be. It was just mentally exhausting. And that's, I mean, I'm not even speaking as someone that is a Black person in the US right now. Like, I don't even want to say what that feels like at this point. So I think there's just a lot going on. And we have to just, like everyone's trying to do their best right now. And that means how people support each other, how you support yourself. And I think just giving yourself some slack too, like trying to get better every day and having a growth mindset of how you approach everything from like interracial conversations to also just how you deal with dating, whatever it may be. I think you just want to make sure that you're like supporting yourself, supporting others, and just getting incrementally better.
Mm-hmm, definitely. And, just being able to spend the time with your thoughts, like even like seeing the scariest thoughts, the thoughts of like, what if I'm going to be alone forever? Well, what if you are going to be alone forever? I think that
Right.
like these thoughts have like shown up so much during a time of solitude, and being able to see that like seeing like the monsters like kind of that exist within us, especially when it comes to dating. So I have seen that to be like very beneficial and good, even though it was like it's scary, but at least we get to see like what's inside of us. So that's been like a good thing for that. But definitely like I love the idea of these groups, because then you start to see that like you think you're alone, but you're not alone. Like there's what you're experiencing is something that like all, so many of us in the same boat are experiencing. So that's beautiful that you guys brought that together during the most perfect time.
That has been a reoccurring theme for sure on this podcast and the Facebook group, is that we are never alone in our situations. Like we might think we are, but we are not.
Definitely. And I think that's the beauty also of the Dateable podcast, like bringing a lot of those like intimate moments to the microphone and being able to be like, oh, see, they're just like us. So I love it. So, well, ladies, thank you so much for being here. I love it if you can share a little bit about like how people can connect with you. I know you have the amazing offering of the dating coaches that are on your website. So if anybody needs extra support when it comes to dating, that's available. The Facebook group, and of course the podcast, the Dateable podcast, which is anywhere you listen to podcasts. But anything else that you want to share, or any last words?
Check us out on our website is probably the easiest way. But like you mentioned, we're available on every major platform for the podcast. So Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and then dateablepodcast.com is where you can find the coaching services you mentioned. And then at Dateable Podcast on social media. Instagram is probably our most active channel.
Awesome. That's anything for you, Yue?
That was it.
Your partner did a good job.
She did a very good job.
Okay. All right, ladies. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. Thank you for sharing your insight, and thank you for the show. I mean, this is just like the beginning. There's so much more to, you offer so much through the show. So I'm so grateful that you came on and we were able to introduce you to the Final Swipe community. So thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Nikki.
The Dateable Podcast is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. Find more podcasts you'll love at frolic.media/podcasts. Want to continue the conversation? First, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter with the handle @Dateable Podcast. Tag us in any post with the hashtag #StayDateable, and trust us, we look at all of those posts. Then head over to our website, dateablepodcast.com. There you'll find all the episodes as well as articles, videos, and our coaching service with vetted industry experts. You can also find our premium Why series, where we dissect, analyze, and offer solutions to some of the most common dating conundrums. We're also downloadable for free on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Overcast, Stitcher Radio, and other podcast platforms. Your feedback is valuable to us, so don't forget to leave us a review. And most importantly, remember to stay dateable.
It takes thousands of hours to become an astronaut. Right, Nina?
Oh, I'm not an astronaut. I'm a design consultant at the Container Store.
But you explore space.
I help you find space with our Alpha Closet systems.
And you're an expert.
Pretty good at it.
And you use satellites to communicate.
I'm doing more virtual in-home closet designs, but I wouldn't say...
We salute you, astronaut Nina, for helping us find space.
You're welcome.
The Alpha sales bonus is here. Earn up to $500 in credit now through February 7th at the Container Store, where space comes from.
Tired of lying awake, tossing and turning, just hoping for a few hours of sleep? Get the sleep you crave with the one-of-a-kind Tempur-Pedic. Only Tempur-Pedic uses proprietary Tempur material that continuously adapts and responds to your body to relieve pressure, so you get deep, uninterrupted sleep. All night, every night. Now's a perfect time to renew your sleep with the one-of-a-kind comfort of Tempur-Pedic and save up to $500 on adjustable mattress sets. Learn more at TempurPedic.com.